Happy Thursday, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. And I hope you caught the view of the ranch just as the sun's setting here in Napa Valley. It was another beautiful day here today, just gorgeous, quite chilly. We haven't really turned on the heat yet in our house, so I've been bundling up, but another beautiful day, and I hope you are all coming to visit us soon. I see we've got some Floridians on. We've got some of the East Coast folks tonight and our friends from Oregon. Great to see you all, and thanks for joining us. So most of you know the routine. Please keep your muted button on unless you'd like to ask a question, and then use the button to use the little blue hand and raise your hand. We're happy to have you chat and ask questions if you like, but also you can use the chat button, and we'll post lots of great information there, links and tricks and so forth. So lots of good information. Feel free to ask your questions there, and I'll feed them in, and we'll also be posting question comments from the Facebook Live, Instagram Live folks who are following us there. I'm really excited. We've got Pamela White here with us tonight from Ora King Salmon. We're going to talk a little bit about this beautiful fish that Todd's cooking tonight, and also how you can get a little of this same fantastic Ora King salmon in your own home. And we have the Busy Bees, Shannon and Jenna, joining us from Florida with tips and tricks to have a easier and hopefully less stressful holiday season and entertaining season in home. I know we're entertaining with smaller groups this year, but it still can be stressful, and some great hacks that we're all going to share along the way is a nice way to reduce that COVID stress. Oh, I see that beautiful white lab walking in the room there. But it's super to have you all with us today. So we're not going to do much from the vineyard today because we've got a lot of special guests, and we've been talking about the really sort of boring hard work that happens this time of year from the ranch. But this wine we're going to have tonight, which I hope everyone has a glass of Elu in hand. I saw earlier today people were pulling out some older vintages from their cellar, which was nice to see, some 2000 and 2002. So I'm drinking the 2015. So if you are drinking a different vintage, do share. We'd love to hear what's in your glass. And we're going to jump right over to Brooke Shank, our winemaker, to talk about a little bit about why we all love Elu. I think when you go around the winery, I know everyone loves our Sauvignon Blanc, but I think the second top staff favorite is the Elu. And I think from the perspective of making it and from just the beauty of this wine, it's just such a pretty wine, and it really is the reflection of what we think is the best of the two properties without acknowledging a certain varietal. And we started making this wine in 1994 with Michel Roland and Michael Scholes. And of course, they're both working on it along with Brooke today. But it's fun to have the Elu, the elected wine tonight. And Brooke, tell us a little bit about the winemaking on this wine. I mean, some of the things we've covered before, but let's jump in and learn about how you make this delicious wine. Gary and Paula's favorite.
Sure. Yeah, as we've talked before, we hand harvest all of our red grapes. So at night when it's cold, typically harvest starts around 2 a.m. in the morning at the coldest part of the night. So the grapes come cold to the winery, and that's again to help preserve the acidity and also the freshness of the grapes. And as you know, I think we do put it through optical sorting. So it's sorted down to the berry based on color and shape and size of the parameters that the winemaking team inputs into the powerful technology of the optical sorter. And at the end, we end up with, perfectly sorted grapes that look like store-bought blueberries. And once those grapes are sorted, then we have a few different options that we can do in the cellar for fermentation. We have concrete tanks and we have oak tanks. We have some small stainless steel tanks and some larger stainless steel tanks. some of the tanks don't have lids on them, like tops, they're open. So that allows us to be able to macerate and extract the color out of the skins a little bit better. So when we're fermenting reds, it's a fast fermentation, and the whole point is, the grapes and the liquid the grapes will separate. They'll go to the top and they'll create a cap. And then there's liquid on the bottom of the tank or the vessel that we're fermenting in. And we need to extract everything we can out of those skins, because the skins have all the color, all the flavor, and all the structure that we want to get into the wine. So in order to do that, we have to do pump overs, and that's pulling the wine out of the bottom of the tank and spreading it over the skins to extract everything we can out of those skins, and use the alcohol and use the heat of fermentation to pull out color, structure, and flavor. We do that about every 3 hours during the heart of fermentation. Fermentation on reds could last 7 to 10 days. It's a pretty quick fermentation. With open top tanks, we also have a different way of pulling out. We have an option, I guess, that we can use. And we actually will push the skins into the wine and break up the cap a little bit. And that creates some new channels that the wine can go down the next time we pump it over. It also is a little bit more gentler on the wine and the extraction process. So maybe if it's getting a lot of tannin and structure, we want to be a little more gentler. We can actually push those skins into it and be a little more gentler. So we have all these different options while we're fermenting reds that will have an impact on the final wine. So we start with all these different blocks and micro blocks, and then we have all these options of fermentation vessels in the cellar, which will lead to different wines as well, even if you start with the same block. And we're giving ourselves all of those options when we go to blend, because we've talked about this in the past, but we want layers and textures and different flavors of our wines. And with this Ilu, the whole goal is to have, dark fruit, but we also want to have a really charming kind of subtle finish. So we want there to be structure, but we also want it to be quite elegant. And that's kind of the style we're going for on Ilu.
Well, I think you really captured that. I get a lot of the beautiful fine grained tannin that we find at our Rutherford vineyard, and I get a lot of that structure that we get from that mountain vineyard at Dollarhide. And Tim and Emily are wondering, when punching the grapes down, do you have to sanitize the paddle first? If so, how do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, sanitation is a really important part of winemaking. So everything is sanitized first. And when we can go from tank to tank. If like I have a Rutherford Cabernet next to another Rutherford Cabernet, we use on the open top tanks out here, and even on most of the reds, it's native fermentation. So we just use yeast from the vineyard that come in. So we're not worried about contaminating different yeast, because we just have the same yeast from the vineyard. But we sanitize, of course, before and after we are done punching down. And we do that using chemicals. We use carbonate, and then we rinse it with water, and then citric acid to neutralize it, and rinse it with water. Kind of boring, but good sanitation. And of course we have to keep everything sanitized, because we don't want to ruin the wine.
Yeah, it's an important part of winemaking, and maintaining the flavors of the fruit and not of bacteria, right? So we want those fruit flavors and the yeast to kind of shine through. One of the things we talked about, I guess, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the Dollarhide elevation, we talked about how we build a barrel and make a barrel, and the importance of our oak program and our own St. Supéry toast that makes up the majority of our barrels that we get from Jean-Luc Sylvain. So it looks like you've got a brand new barrel right there that you're going to show us.
Yeah, I do. So talking about barrels, another option for us to ferment in is a brand new French oak barrel. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to describe what we do in this process without showing it. So here's what a brand new barrel looks like. But you can see this video. This is Juan Vega. He's our barrel master. And he's actually going to take apart a barrel, well, halfway apart. So he's pulling the rings off of this barrel here. This is a used barrel. We just wanted to demonstrate on a barrel that's already been used. Didn't want to take apart a brand new one yet. But you know, we sent him to a cooper to learn how to do this skill. Not everybody knows how to take apart a barrel, but you can see the staves there are getting loosened by removing those rings. And as you saw a few weeks ago, when Emma was talking about how barrels are made, they're literally just put together with staves and then held together tightly with those rings. So he's now pulled the head off of the barrel. And I have one here that is a used barrel as well with the head off. We can look inside. It's red because it has been used once. But what we do is we put about 400 pounds of sorted berries into the barrel. And then Juan will put the head back on the barrel, and he'll put the rings back on, put it all back together. And then we'll put the barrels on this rack that looks like a normal rack. But if you look closely, there's actually rollers on this rack. And that allows us to be able to mix the barrels with the berries in it while they're fermenting. And that we do that again every 3 hours in the heart of ferment. With barrel fermentation, it's a lot slower of a fermentation than with tanks because there's not as much mass or heat going on. So whereas a tank would ferment in 7 to 10 days, a barrel ferment might be 6 to 8 weeks before it's done fermenting. So you can imagine the labor that is involved in barrel fermentation. And why do we do that? We do that because we are, again, trying to create a different mouthfeel profile, and barrel fermentation gives this incredible integration with that new oak fermenting in it, and gives, as Emma always says, gives a little bit of heft to the blend. And also there's a real softness to the palate. So we do a lot of Petit Verdot in barrel ferments, and Petit Verdot tends to have a lot of structure and tannin, a lot of tannin, and barrel fermentation works really well with Petit Verdot because it kind of tames it down a little bit and makes it round and soft.
Well, and I also think you've been really successful doing Merlot in this style, because Merlot is already plumping up the center palate, and we're plumping up that mid palate by the oak integration and the barrel fermentation. So I always feel like that does a fantastic job. And it was amazing to me the first time that I tasted the trials that we had done this, just how supple and the texture and mouth-filling quality that you get from that rapid oak integration and that slow fermentation. It's just really cool and absolutely delicious wine there, Brooke. What are you getting from the flavor profile on this? Because it is just lovely, delicious, and kind of sexy.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the joys about making Ilu for me and Michael is that there's no constraints on how much of what variety we get to make. We have to use. We get to just make the best blend of the vintage and the best blend of our two properties. So that's really exciting to be able to use the elevation Cabernet Sauvignon from Dollarhide, and also, you know, use the Rutherford tannin structure from our Rutherford reds here. So it's really fun blend to make. And of course the percentages change every year, but when we're looking at the blend, we are trying to make the best blend and try to find dark fruit. We get that dark fruit normally from from all of them, but Cabernet Sauvignon will give us, you know, a lot of the blackberry, cassis, and the tannins from both properties, really. And then we have, in this particular one, the 2015 that I have in my glass, there's 74% cab, so majority. Then 10% Merlot in this one, which the Merlot, like you said, it plumps up the center palate, and Merlot is a great blender into Cabernet because it kind of fills in the hole in your mouth, on your tongue. And so we use Merlot to fill that center palate. This has 7% Malbec, and we've talked about Malbec in the last few weeks, is that it's a very juicy grape. It brings a lot of acidity and a lot of juiciness to a blend, and it has like boysenberry flavors to it, and can also add a little color too. So we use that in the Ilu. This has 5% Cabernet Franc, which we grow at Rutherford, and Cabernet Franc can bring a little herbal note to a blend, and sometimes even some floral notes as well. And then 4% Petit Verdot, which again brings a lot of color and structure. And then when we add the barrel fermentation in there as well, then it can actually add a little bit of depth, but softness as well with this incredible barrel integration. So on this particular one, I'm getting the dark fruits and the blackberry. I'm getting mocha from the Merlot. I'm getting a little bit of black licorice, and then I'm getting a really amazing integration of oak, not overpowering oak, but it's integrated in the palate, which is what we're looking for.
Yeah, I think our wines really start to come into their own after the first 5 years. Our red wines, they need that. Dezel's had enough time to decant the wine, and said that really helps with the tannins and softness. And I do think, particularly when our wines are younger, that a little extra decanting and airtime really helps soften those tannins and bring the wine kind of into its own. And mine's been open for a couple hours. I didn't decant it, but it really is starting to open up even more. And sometimes you don't have a lot of time to decant, and with a younger wine, I often vigorously decant it, where I'm sort of shaking that bottle into the decanter and doing some rapid aeration, and that can really lift the wine quite quickly from and soften those tannins up. So if you have a younger wine or a wine that's really structured like this, it is nice to think about decanting for that purpose, not so much the old wine and the sediment that you're trying to remove, but just to bring out that softness that we want to see. And Dezel's suggesting a steak. Well, Todd's making fish tonight because it's a little healthier, but those steaks, they're going to come in the Warm Winter Night series. You're going to learn all about Todd's reverse searing and some of his special steak techniques, so watch for that. But Maureen, not specific to the Ailu necessarily, but are there any current St. Supéry vintages that you recommend in particular for setting aside for a couple years of age? So what are you tucking away in your cellar, Brooke? What vintages from Napa Valley?
Definitely 2013 is in my cellar. That's the most recent one in my mind that is going to go on and on and on and on for years and years and years. However, I mean, we've had some great vintages in the last 10 years. So, the 14s are amazing right now and will be for a little while. The 16s look really good. So, I mean, we're lucky because we have had really good weather for the last 10 years. So
yeah,
there's a lot there.
There's a lot to be said, for that Mediterranean climate that we have in Napa Valley. And I mirror your comments, Brooke. The 13 vintage is super structured. I am still sitting on all of my 13s. I definitely stocked up. The critics were claiming it's the best vintage of the last 40 years or some number close to that. And I'm really hyping because it is a super structured vintage. So for me, the 13s, I really haven't jumped into them as heavily. 12s were super soft and really pretty right now. And I feel like the 12s are quite delicious. And to me, the 14 vintage from Napa Valley is kind of the best of 2012 and 2013. Some pretty softness, some really pretty fruit, and then plenty of structure. So the 14s, I think, are aging nicely and are really starting to come into their own. To me, the 15s are quite similar to 12. I think they're aging similar to 12 and have a softness and just lushness that we're seeing now. And I think they're going to be earlier drinkers for pleasure than the 13 and 14. I think 12 and 15 just have that a softness that's a little more welcoming earlier in their lives. 16, again, similar to 14, I think. Nice structured vintage. 17's been quite delicious. We haven't seen a bit more age on that yet, but yeah, we've got some good vintages here, huh? My philosophy is always to stock up. I have a theory that I would like to always be drinking 10-year-old wines. And so I buy some for now and for 10 years. And my husband tells me that we have too much wine because I do that. But the reality is we do not have enough parties, particularly this year. So in 2021, I'm looking forward to a great vaccine and more parties where we're digging into those older vintage wines so that I don't get in trouble for having perhaps an overstocked cellar. Tom Fowler is saying they're savoring the last bottle of St. Supéry Rosé and have more arriving in Florida tomorrow. Oh, thank God for that. You don't want to run out of wine during COVID. So cheers to that. All right, so Brooke, delicious wine. You guys worked really hard to blend this wine. It's all about blending, and I know you and Michael, you know, we think, oh, there's 5 varietals in there, but even in 100% Cabernet, there's still about 30 lots. You guys are tasting every single barrel and micromanaging those wines, and it's a huge amount of work and a lot of sweat. And wines come in my office, taste this. And these 3, and then, you know, 2 weeks later, you're back again and refining things. And just there's that level of perfection that you and Michael and Michelle really work for. So congratulations, this wine's delicious. And we're gonna jump over to the Busy Bees and talk about how we're going to start drinking these wines and entertaining them with the people in our close pod, with a thought to how we're going to be entertaining and drinking them in 2021 with more of our friends over for home and more of our family. But Shannon and Jenna, you have been sharing your expertise for the last 7 years, but really your entire lives, you've been learning from your grandmothers and your family on how to entertain and some really super hacks. And you've kind of brought all of those hacks together and are going to share a few of them with us tonight. But everyone, you should be following these ladies on Instagram, and some great tips on their website, also thebusybee.co. So ladies, tell us a little bit about how you got into this business.
Hi. So like you said, we like to say that we've been doing this our entire lives. We draw most of our inspiration from our grandmothers who hosted all the holidays and special occasions and everything in between. And they didn't know it at the time, but they were teaching us the art of hosting. And we didn't really realize it until we started inviting family and friends into our homes as we got older, and truly understanding how important it is as the host or the hostess to be a part of the conversations that are taking place, and sharing in laughter and connecting on deeper levels. And so we really started to pay attention to how our Mimi and our Nana did it, because they made it seem like so easy. They were always part of those conversations. We remember them always being at the table. And so we're like, how did they do it? And so we put together what we call hostful hacks. A lot of it is drawn from them. We've come up with some of our own, and they are just simple hosting tips and tricks that you can use to spend less time in the kitchen and more time with loved ones.
That's what we like, especially now. Let's share the joy with each other, and less time working and more time enjoying. So tell us some of your tips for how we can have a fantastic holiday season here.
All right, well, we're going to turn the camera around so I can bring you into my dining room. So as you guys know, Thanksgiving and the holidays are right around the corner. And if you are hosting this year, that can feel stressful and overwhelming. So we put together our top hostful hacks for the season. So we'll go through some of those. The first one is to set your table in advance. So you want to do that no less than a day prior. So go ahead and set all of your place settings, set your full centerpiece, get that out of the way so it's one less thing you have to worry about on the day of, and then you can just focus on all of those last minute preparations.
That is just gorgeous. And, you know, my mother-in-law always says, what can I do for Thanksgiving? And I say, please come over the day before and set the table, because it really makes a difference. You start to feel like you're prepared. And I love how you have the vases at the ends of the table so you can have great interaction with your guests, and the way you've tied the napkins, super cute.
Thank you.
That. And
yeah,
your serviceware you also have out.
Yeah, so in addition to setting your table in advance, we also recommend pre-setting your serveware. We like to use Post-it notes or sticky notes to go ahead and label where each of our dishes are going to be plated. This is just a quick reminder the day of where everything's going to go. And then it also ensures that you have enough of the proper serveware for each of your recipes that you're preparing.
And a nice little tip for when someone says, can I do something? You can say, grab the bowl that says mashed potatoes and pop them in there, please.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
makes it nice and easy. Oh, are those Brussels?
Yeah, so this is actually one of our favorite Hostful hacks, and that is to incorporate halfway homemade recipes into your menu. So no one ever said that you had to make every recipe from scratch in order to be a thoughtful host or hostess. So we like to incorporate already made or easy to prepare recipes that you can purchase from your local market. So here we just picked up some roasted vegetables, added our own seasoning, and it's ready to go.
Oh, and looks delicious. I'm ready for a side of those Brussels for sure.
And everyone enjoys them just the same, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest pain points that we hear often from our community when it comes to hosting and entertaining is the cleanup that has to occur after all of your guests have come and gone. So the best hostful hack we have for that is to actually run your dishwasher the night before. So the morning of, you'll come down, empty it completely, put all your dishes away so that you can start with a clean slate. And then as you're preparing your dishes the day of, you can fill it as you go. If you have anything that needs to be hand washed, we recommend doing that as you go. And then if you don't have time to do that, you can always place them in the top rack of the dishwasher temporarily and get back to that later. And then we recommend from there, once all of your dishes are prepared, go ahead and run the dishwasher again. So after dinner, you can empty it and then put all the dirty dinnerware inside.
Yeah, cleaning as you go is something that my husband has been training me for over 30 years. And he's doing a good job. I'm getting better, but a very good tip.
And you know, it's also helpful too, because when guests arrive, then like the sink is empty and the counter is clean and clear. So it really helps out.
Yeah, you feel like you're all ready.
Yep. And then our last hostful hack here is Thanksgiving tends to yield a lot of leftovers, so we would recommend being prepared with to-go containers that you can send home with your guests. We prefer glass containers because they're sustainable and you can reheat the leftovers right in them. And then you can personalize it with a little thank you note, just thanking everybody for the time together and for sharing new memories.
Well, and as we say in our house, you know, you would starve without leftovers. So that's a great tip, and leftovers when you've eaten out is great too. Those are wonderful tips. So what about those guests? You know, in our house, we tend to have guests who come for a day or a week or 3 months. And 3 months tends to be kind of often too. And we love them, but how do we make them feel more at home so that they just enjoy?
All right, we're going to turn it over to Jenna now, and she'll take us through some of those hacks. Yes, so when you're hosting overnight guests, your #1 goal is to make them feel at home. And so we always suggest that you start by freshening your linens just to remove any musty smells and to soften them. And we have an easy solution for that. So first you're going to start by washing the linens in 1 cup of vinegar with hot water. And then you'll run a second cycle with ½ a cup of baking soda and hot water. And then you'll dry your linens completely, fold your towels, and then you can make their bed and freshen it up before they arrive. And then another fun suggestion that we love to suggest is to provide entertainment for your guest. And so we always include like a stack of magazines and books and even a journal that they can write in. And we place that on the nightstand near their bed. Another fun idea is to have your Wi-Fi login and password posted. So we typically print that and put it in a cute little picture frame and place that on their nightstand as well. So that way it's in their area and they can easily access it. And now, okay, we've all been there, right? You pack, you get to your destination, and you realize you forgot something. So we always love to provide our guests with basic necessities. So think like chapstick, extra charger, lotion, or a hair blow dryer. And we like to keep those stored in a cute little basket in the bathroom so then they can grab and go as needed. And then a last little gift that we love to provide our guests is a reusable water bottle so they can use that throughout the stay.
Oh, that's so true, because, you know, when you're traveling, you get so dehydrated and you never remember to drink enough water. And for me, that's so important when I'm on the road.
Yeah, and it's just a cute little gift, you know, that they get to keep and take home with them as well. So, and speaking of easy accessible beverages, we always love to set up a coffee bar, especially for those early risers. And if your coffee maker has a timer, we suggest you set it really early for the morning so that way coffee's brewed, warm, and ready to go as your company wakes up and begins their day. And then our last tip is to set up a little continental breakfast. So think like donuts and pastries, anything that's easy for them to grab and go. And you can personalize that with a cute little note that says, please help yourself.
Oh, that's really nice. Some of us like to get up particularly early and go for a run before anyone else is up. And I like my coffee before I do that. So
yeah,
great, great tip.
And we always have, I mean, you can do some canned, water, and then we have, creamer and sugar, of course, so they can just help themselves.
Oh, I love that. And you have your book as well that is so fabulous. So where we can get more of these tips.
Yes, so we just shared only a few of our favorite hostful hacks, but we actually have this hostful hack handbook. And if you're hosting the holidays this year and you're looking for ways to simplify that, this book has 110 must-know hacks that will help you spend less time in the kitchen and more time with your loved ones.
Well, that's fabulous. And thank you for that, because that's what, 2020, the one thing that we're going to remember from this year is the time we get to spend with loved ones and how important it is, and just reflecting on that importance and being grateful and thankful to be together. So thank you also for the discount with the St. Supéry 15 coupon code and for joining us. It's really nice. Thanks, Shannon and Jana. Great tips, and we'll be thinking of those as we plan through the holiday season. So now let's jump over to Pamela White, who is joining us from New Zealand. She is officially our furthest guest this evening, coming from halfway around the world, and has sent to us this fantastic Ora King salmon. You are the first aquaculture that has been granted a AAA status with the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch, which is one of our favorite reference tools that we use, the Seafood Watch app. And you're doing amazing things. You've been there for over 25 years. So do tell us a little bit about your aquaculture, because it's super cool.
Absolutely, and it's lovely to join you all tonight. Thank you. So I'm coming to you from the top of the South Island of New Zealand. It's a really beautiful region. I think we've got a bit of a video coming up there just to show you the kind of environment that we farm our salmon in. So our salmon farms are marine net pens, and they actually take up a tiny weeny little bit of space. In the vastness of the Marlborough Sounds. We take up about 0.003% of the water space in the Marlborough Sounds. And within our marine net pens also, we have a salmon density of around about 2% salmon to about 98% water. So they've got heaps of space within those marine net pens as well to breed, to grow, to feed, and to do all those kind of things that salmon need to do. Absolutely.
Oh. Gorgeous. I would be a happy salmon if I was swimming there. It's just beautiful. And you're really doing a great job of replicating their natural life cycle of starting in fresh water as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly. So one of the things that really makes us a bit different as an aquaculture business is we run through the whole process, right from our broodstock fish that we have, our hatcheries onto our sea farms, and then our processing and getting our product through to the end user. So we grow our broodstock and therefore our eggs at a wonderful place called the Te Waikarapupu Springs, which is this beautiful fresh spring water. It comes bubbling up out the ground at around about 14,000 litres per second. This beautiful fresh water. It's actually been declared some of the clearest water in the southern hemisphere. So we have our broodstock fish there, and we've been, as you said, we've been doing this for about 25 years now. So we've bred 9 different generations of fish in that time. And every time we do, we're selecting the fish, the broodstock, for the very best traits that we can get in our Ora King salmon. You know, that wonderful, vibrant orange colour, the great marbled fat lines in the fish, which gives you all those really healthy omega-3 fats and oils, that wonderful buttery texture that we get, and also the size of our salmon as well. So obviously we've traced our salmon all the way from our broodstock through to our harvest. We know where our fish have come from, and that makes us able to go back and decide which fish we'll use for the next generation as we go forward as well.
Well, and I know that chefs around the world are really looking forward to your fish, and they count on it for their own high quality cuisine that they're making. So kudos to you on that, and just delicious fish, as Chef Todd has made for us many times. But you know, what should we be thinking about in our decision process when we're choosing you know, a sustainably farmed fish like yours?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'd actually recommend to anybody, you know, whether you're buying your fish from a fish supplier or you're out at a restaurant, you know, ask questions about where your fish has come from. It's really important. Ask if it's been sustainably raised, or if it's wild fish, if it's been sustainably harvested. Find out if it's got any of those external audits like the Monterey Bay Seafood Watch Program. BAP is another one, ASC, we've got lots of acronyms. And just really find out where your fish has come from, where and how it's been harvested. Make sure it's been looked after the very best it can, and that's obviously going to result in the very best fish in front of you on the plate as well.
Yeah, well, it is delicious, delicious fish. Anything else that I should have asked you about your sustainable aquaculture and practices, other than where can we get it and how do we order it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key thing with sustainability to think about as well too is it's so important to look after the environment that we're farming in, but there's all the other things that go into it too. What the fish is getting fed, you know, how we're looking after the people that we work with and work for us, how we look after the community that we operate in as well. All those factors make it really important. So just jumping over to where can we get Ora King salmon? Like, as you know, we used to supply more through to food service and to restaurants. That was kind of our primary audience. And then 2020 came along and tossed everything up in the air. So now we do have a little bit more available through retail. There's a whole range of suppliers in the US, and Lara's been great enough to pop up onto the comments there. We've got a where to buy on our Ora King website, so you can jump on in there. There's quite a few places that do nationwide delivery. And as well as that, we're very excited. We're just about to launch our Gold Belly page as well. So within the next week, we're going to have supply available through Gold Belly direct to you, and that's coming straight from us at Ora King. So that gives you the option to buy from our entire range of products, which we're really excited about. And if anybody wants to know anything more about our fish, how it's raised, all those kind of things, you can always get in touch. We're always happy to chat, but jump on over to our website as well and have a look. Our brand manager's just launched a brand new website, so she's very excited about that.
Well, we're looking forward to checking that out. And thank you so much. And I'm really excited to see what Todd has done with your beautiful salmon, because I know it's going to be delicious. He's so talented. And, you know, presentation and deliciousness are two things that Todd excels at, as well as pairing it with our delicious wines that Brooke and Michael and the team have been making and growing. So let's jump over to Chef Todd and see what we've got this evening, because I know it's going to be fantastic.
Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks to our both of our guests who have provided some fantastic holiday hints and tips and hacks and things, as well as great information about sourcing some sustainable seafood. This happens to be my favorite sustainable farmed salmon to use throughout the year, and I've used it for quite a few years now. It's my go-to. If I can't get my wonderful local king salmon when they're running through here up in Northern California, then I know that I've got a fantastic, reliable source that is consistent throughout the years, and it's excellent quality. So it's very versatile in the kitchen. From my standpoint of pairing it up with wines, you can pair it with white, you can pair it with red, as I'm going to do tonight. Hopefully you have the recipe. You can either follow along or try it yourself sometime. But I've done different variations on this Ora King salmon, everything from a sashimi style dish that we did a couple weeks ago, if you happen to see that and join us. But I thought that with the holiday season coming up very soon, a nice way to do a presentation on a seafood option for your entertaining would be to do a whole entire side of the fish itself. So a fillet. This is boneless, skinless as well, but I saved the skin to crisp it up to make sure that I'm being sustainable and using as much of that beautiful creature as I can. And so the idea is a specific kind of a roasting technique on this, so that you can cook the whole fish ahead of time and you can serve it like family style, or have a really nice looking piece that will go well for the holiday table. But also to introduce a red wine butter sauce called Beurre Rouge. And this is a French classic kind of a sauce, which you can either use white wine as a Beurre Blanc or red wine in this case. And since we're pairing this with our elu, I think this is a good match to go along with it. The fish has plenty of flavor. You have this nice buttery, oily characteristic to it that's rich. It's got that fantastic texture. So to be a little decadent throughout the holidays, why not make a really nice French red wine butter sauce? So I'll show you that method of putting all that together, as well as talk about the steps that it takes to actually cook the fish itself in the oven. Let me go ahead and show you what I have for the ingredients. I kind of organize everything so that you can see. Now, number one, we have, if you are following along on the recipe, I do have some of our red wines. So obviously, whether it's the elu or any of our red wines, it's probably going to be about a cup to a cup and a half of that red wine in a small sauce pot. And this is stainless steel. There's a little bit of some red wine vinegar. There are some fresh shallots that are minced or chopped really fine. I'm lucky I have those right in the garden, so I love to use those. That's part of the French classic ingredient right there. I also have some fresh herbs that I'm going to finish off and put into this that really help to kind of tie it in with the salmon and the wine together. So over here from my garden, I have some lemon thyme. You can use regular thyme as well. There's tarragon here, which is fantastic with salmon. There's a classic pairing there. It's got that licorice kind of anise flavor to it. I happen to have some beautiful Italian parsley in the garden, so you can always add that for freshness. And then I even had some wild fennel growing still in the garden. So I thought I would chop that up and put it in, kind of sweet. And again, a little bit of that licorice. So the lemon thyme is going to be kind of resinous, that heartier, heavier kind of herb flavor that you might find that goes really well with the barrel oak contact that you have there. And so what I did was I stripped off some of the leaves. I fine chopped a lot of that to go into the butter sauce as a garnish. But I also saved some of the nice individual leaves as a sprinkle garnish to go over the top, so we can make a really nice decoration. So that's what I have here, some of the leaves of all of those different types of herbs and the chopped ones. I'm going to use some creme fraiche. You can also use whipped cream. That's part of stabilizing and enriching the butter sauce. I'm using creme fraiche. It has a little bit more of that cheese kind of culture to it, but it's very rich and it'll add a lot to the sauce itself. Understand that I took the wine itself, about a cup and a half of it, and I put it into my pot along with the ingredients that you see here. And also I saved the stems from all of these leaves because they impart some flavor and they're just going to be strained out afterwards. And so I put all that into my sauce pot. I put it on very low and I let that kind of cook down and reduce down until it went from about a cup, cup and a half, all the way down to what you see here, which is probably close to about a quarter of a cup to an eighth of a cup. So it's really concentrated. It's acidic. It's very strong on its own, but it's a great vehicle to be able to incorporate and emulsify in the butter. And this butter here is unsalted. That's just a little bit, to me anyways. But it's cubed and it is ice cold. It's very cold so that you have cold butter that's going to melt and emulsify into the sauce nicely. All right. As far as the salmon goes, let's talk about that so we can kind of get that going into the oven. What I thought I would do is do a method where you start off at a high temperature, a high heat, and then you finish off at a low temperature. So you drop it. And so essentially what you're doing is oven searing this beautiful fillet. So there's a really nice gorgeous fillet of that Ora King salmon. So buttery and rich. It's got that fantastic flavor and the texture is really nice. The king salmon, something about king salmon is wonderful as far as the mouthfeel on it. It eats so well. You know, they say that it's almost like, they call it almost like the Wagyu of salmon, if you could consider beef being the same way because of the buttery fat content that's in there. But I really enjoy that flavor. I love that richness of the buttery oil that's in there. It's not overpoweringly fishy, which is a really important thing. So what I've done ahead of time, and I know you've probably seen this beforehand. If you haven't, you might want to consider one of these, not only for your holiday turkey, for your roast, your prime rib, but also you can use it for your salmon. And so what I thought I would do is use that InstaProbe and put that in from the digital thermometer. This will stay outside of my oven, up on the door. Some of them have a magnet on the back. And I set it for the internal temperature to stop or to send off the alarm by having the probe in here at about 125 degrees. And so as I remove that from the oven at 125, it will continue to cook. It will rest a little. There's some carryover cooking that happens there. And so by the time I'm done with it, it's probably rested up to about over 130 degrees, 132, 134, which should be a really nice kind of a medium texture on the inside. So it's still going to have that really nice, soft, moist texture on the inside. But you can adjust that as you wish. If you'd like your salmon cooked a little bit further, you can definitely set your timer or your temperature gauge on here just a little bit higher. So it's a great way to act as a reminder. It's a fail-safe type of temperature and degree of doneness, kind of a guarantee. You've got other things going on. You might get distracted. You're talking, chatting with your friends and family. So it's one of those things that you can kind of set. It'll alarm you for when it's ready to come out. So then you can concentrate more on enjoying your time. Now, this is going to go into my preheated oven, which I have at a very high temperature. If you have a broiler, you want to start off at a broiler because the idea is you want to get this really nice kind of sear and some browning started on the top surface. So if you have a broiler, put it in maybe about 4, 5, 6 minutes, depending on the thickness and the size of your salmon. This salmon was seasoned up ahead of time. I pulled it out so it kind of came up to just a little bit of room temperature so it's not ice cold. And then I brushed it with some melted butter, right? Again, with the butter. There's also, by the way, a little bit of butter underneath it on this foil. Now the foil is going to help so that you can lift it off and slide it onto your service platter. I also have a rack underneath that. And the reason for that is because I want to get some air circulation underneath it as opposed to being flat on the surface of the actual baking dish, the pan itself. So that way I've got some air circulating around it and it'll cook nicely that way. Now, once I get the beautiful color on this, I'm going to drop the oven temperature down extremely low, like maybe to 250, 275 degrees, and let it cook nice and soft and slow with that residual temperature that's in the oven. And so that's a nice way of making sure that the flesh doesn't tighten up too much. It doesn't push out any of the juices. You don't see any of the proteins that coagulate and push out little white droplets all around. So it should be nice and tender and soft and juicy on the inside. So that's a fun way of cooking it. And it's not uncommon to do things like chicken like that, you know, to start off high temperature. Maybe your favorite way of doing your holiday turkey is to do that same idea. But you can sear oven hot initially and then turn down to cook softly and juicy on the inside with any of those proteins. So definitely think about using this. I'm going to go ahead and put this into the oven so I can start on the butter sauce.
Well, and I'm just going to wax poetically about my thermometer because I love that thermometer. I think it is one of my top 3 tools in the kitchen, and you will never overcook your fish or your chicken ever again. It's one of my favorite hostess gifts. if someone doesn't have one of those. And I just absolutely love it. And it really makes a difference for me, not being a professional chef. And it warms my heart, Todd, that you actually use one too, because you're so brilliant.
You know, anything that I can show really to make it user-friendly and easier, there's no reason why not to use it. You know, if I'm still working in busy restaurants and things like that, I may not have the time to do that, and it'll go back into the chef instinct on timing and checking everything for as far as doneness. But why not? You know, you're spending a lot of money and investing in a beautiful piece of salmon, a really nice prime rib, a piece of whatever it may be. Anything that you're going to go into the oven, why not set the timer on it just as a reminder, because we've got so many social distractions and phones and everything going on. So it's great to have a reminder like that. So I really like to do that.
I also do set it to go off 10 or 20 degrees earlier so that I can finish other things that I have just ready to go. So everything's kind of finishing at the same time. And so it's a wonderful reminder to say, okay, where is the fish? Where is the turkey? How far along is it? Because, you know, it never takes the same amount of time to cook. So, you know, when you get to that certain temperature, it's like, oh, okay, I can now mash the potatoes. I can do these few other things. So
that is a great, that's a great idea. You know, use it as a little early warning system. You can check on things to see how they're holding up, how they're coming along. You can time everything else to go along with it. So that's a great idea. So let me go ahead and take you through the making of this beurre rouge, the butter sauce. The salmon can be in the oven. You have your timer set on it. It's going to give you a little beep so you know when it's ready to come off. What I have here, and I went ahead and did this up ahead to understand that it's going to take a little while for it to cook down slowly. So you want to not walk away from it because it can easily scorch if you have the temperature up too high, and where it's boiling, it could also scorch and get some burnt flavors on the outside there. So what you might want to do is just kind of take the time to really watch it and pay attention to it so it doesn't get too far away from you. And now that you have everything, you're going to use this whisk. And basically, now that I've got it up to a little bit of a simmer over low temperatures, as low as it will go, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of my creme fraiche. And if you had cream, you could use cream as well. This is going to add just a little bit of extra richness. And it will help as far as stabilizing the emulsification as well. So then I'm just going to stir this until it kind of melts in. And I do need a little bit of liquid in here, so it's okay if it looks a little watered out because I am going to emulsify pat after pat of these butter cubes, these cold butter cubes in there. And as they melt, they will become creamy. They will get a little bit emulsified in there, and they'll create a suspension that's going to hold temporarily here for a while. Now you can make this up ahead of time, not too far ahead, but it is something that you can make up ahead of time. You don't have to necessarily save it and try to do it all at the end. But it does need to be kept at a very low, kind of a lukewarm temperature so that it doesn't congeal and set up, but also that it doesn't get too hot to the point where it'll break and separate, where you have almost like melted butter, clarified butter that has separated out. So what we're really looking for here is a nice emulsification. And I would say with that 1 to 1.5 cups of red wine and a couple tablespoons of red wine vinegar, once that reduces down, then you add the creme fraiche or cream in there. Then you're going to add maybe upwards of about 6 ounces worth of butter, but you can go by taste. What you're looking for is that nice balance. You definitely have unsalted butter, which has richness, but it doesn't have any additional flavor or acid to it. And so that's what the red wine and the herbs that are steeped into it and the shallots are going to do. They're going to really add a lot of flavor to this butter sauce. So as the butter melts, I'm going to add a little bit more at a time.
Yum.
This is kind of the fun part. And it'll get slightly thicker, slightly creamier. If it is boiling away, please turn it down. If you see just a little bit of slight simmer bubble on the side, that's fine, that works. The cold temperature will kind of stabilize it and temper it so it won't break on you. And again, remember that you could also do this if you wanted to have a white wine butter sauce. You just substitute out the vinegar for a white vinegar, like champagne vinegar, and then you can use white wine. Either our Sauvignon Blanc would be great with this. And so if you wanted something lighter that wasn't red, maybe you're not pairing it with a red wine as we are tonight with our Elu, then maybe you can just use a white wine. So it's pretty versatile. It's an old classic sauce, but it is a really luxurious kind of a touch, especially for celebrations like the holidays.
Yeah, well, with all that butter, Julia Child is your adopted mother, I think. You know, you're really going to town there.
Butter makes things better.
It does.
Yes. And you know, the nice part is we have this fish that already has that luscious natural oil in there that's really rich. And so it's really important to me to make sure that I've got acid in here and acid in the wine, which our wines always have. So they become so food friendly because they're balanced like that. They have a nice clean finish. So even if it is extremely rich food, oily food, by the time you have a sip of that wine, it's like cleansing your palate and preparing your tongue for the next bite and the next sip that you're going to have. All right, so as we add this butter in, it's melting away, kind of emulsifying in. I do have a bowl and a strainer that I'm going to strain it into. So you could put this on the side. You could strain it into, let's say, like a sauce boat. You can hold it off to the side that way. I'm going to go ahead and cut the heat. I think I have enough heat in here, residual heat. Yeah. If we were to dump all the butter in, for running a little bit behind, you're in a hurry, it's going to melt unevenly. You might have it actually start to break on you. So you have to be careful with that. You want to be cautious. Let me see if I can get that a little closer. You can see that wonderful color, the richness, the depth of color, real concentration of the wine.
I think I want to dress in that color. It's so pretty.
That's beautiful. All right. So I'm going to give this a little taste. It will need some salt because the butter is unsalted. So even though I've got all the acid in there, I'm going to put a tiny bit of salt so that it pairs up well with the actual wine and the fish itself.
Robert Kaplan thinks that's more than 6 ounces from your recipe.
Very, very astute. Counting very well there. Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow.
Did it work, Todd?
Nice. Yes. Delicious. You know, that first initial taste that you have of it just really, you know, kind of shakes your palate there, wakes it up. You can just imagine how good everything is going to taste with that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and strain this. I've got a fine strainer. I want to get rid of all the shallots and the herb stems that were in there that did their job by adding all that flavor and aroma to it. Beautiful color. But on top of that, I thought it would be nice to add those fresh herbs. So the ones that I chopped earlier, I'm just going to fold them in at the end here. Just at the very end, nice and fresh. And then we're ready to hold this warm. You can serve it alongside of the salmon itself. You can see that wonderful kind of pour, that nappe that we have on the sauce from the emulsification that's in there.
Robert's asking about how much butter do you think you used? Because it's looking a little more than that 6 ounces.
It could very well be. So, you know, if a block of butter is what, 1 pound, so that's 16. Realistically, I'm probably more about like 8 ounces here.
Okay.
I hope that doesn't.
We'll send you to the, you know, butter support group.
I've got to go to some butter counseling, I think. Here's the finished salmon. Obviously, we don't have time to finish everything in there, but it is on the platter. So from that foil point where it's on the foil, I did drain off some of the juices and the excess butter and the oil that came off, so it's not swimming on the platter. I set that aside. I can use that maybe for something else down the road. But here is the beautiful color on the outside of this wonderful Ora King salmon fillet. Inside it's nice and tender. I know that I've temped it and I pulled it out. So it came out about 125 and it carried up probably about towards 135. So on the inside here, it's going to have a nice degree of doneness. Another nice thing to think about is this thicker section where the head was on the fillet is going to be less done or a little more moist versus this section here. So if some of your guests would prefer to have more done, like medium well to well done, the tail section where it tapers down is going to be that way. Also, for those who like the real buttery characteristic, this bottom section here, this quadrant through here, is the belly section right here. So if you want that and you know, you want to offer that up to your guests, that's a nice touch as well. Otherwise, from here, you can either dress it and serve it all together You can have people pass, or it can be on the table. They help themselves, whether you do it on a buffet or something and everyone walks through. If you're all in the same bubble and you feel comfortable with that, you can do that. Otherwise, you could dress it all up, have it all garnished and decorated, present it at the table, take it back into the kitchen and individually plate up for everyone if there's a concern about everyone touching the food or anything like that during these times that we have. What I'm going to do here is go ahead and put some cracked black pepper on. This will go well, especially with the Cabernet-based wine, with all those other wonderful varietals. All right, so it stands up to it. It's very strong. I don't need any additional salt. It was salted beforehand. You might remember that. I love to use additional parts of the fish itself. Here's some of the crispy skin. And so what I did was I put this in the recipe as well. So the beginning part, if you wanted to make this up ahead of time, you can. You could do it the day before or so. It'll stay nice and crisp. It's essentially like a crackling. So if you really enjoy salmon, the salmon intensity and flavor, and you want that texture and crunch, you can make this up ahead, putting it in between some paper in a couple of baking dishes, baking sheets, and putting that into the oven for maybe about half an hour at 350. I put some sea salt on this as well, and it gets nice and crispy, and then you just lift off the paper and it separates out so you can use that. So this is a nice garnish that I love to use. I want to utilize all the good parts of the fish as much as I can. So I have these that I'm going to garnish with.
Todd, we got a couple questions online.
Yes.
Elizabeth's asking how many people would that size salmon serve?
And so if this is the main and only entree protein that you're offering, this could go anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 people, all depending on how much you want to offer to them. If this is going to be a really nice addition to your holiday turkey, your prime rib, your ham, whatever it may be, you're going to do a little offering of some seafood for those who enjoy seafood or don't eat red meat, or people who want to do like a really nice surf and turf kind of a thing. So all depending on how big of a portion you want to do there. Initially, this side was probably about, I would say maybe about 4 pounds. Okay, so if you wanted to do whatever size, 8-ounce portion is pretty generous. A 6-ounce portion could be smaller if you wanted to. So it's entirely up to you and the other things that you're offering.
And
now,
sides that you would serve with that?
What's that now?
Sides that you would suggest?
Sides. You could do some great vegetables with this. If you have some, maybe some spinach with some garlic and sauteed. You could also do a really nice starch, like either some roasted potatoes, which would be delicious with this butter sauce as well. So if you had some beautiful small fingerling potatoes or something like that. You could also do some wild rice. I love wild rice, nutty wild rice, especially knowing that we're having a rich red wine with this. I think that would go fantastic. It's nutty, it's got texture to it, and it's one of those things you think about during the fall and the winter seasons, some wild rice. So consider those. I would definitely serve majority of this sauce on the side. People can put as much as they want on there or not, but for presentation sakes, I think we can also drizzle a little bit on.
Gorgeous.
So as it comes across on the platter or you're passing it in front of everyone, they can see it. Look at that beautiful color on there.
I'm going to be right up.
And I think really what I would do is avoid putting it over the fish itself so it doesn't, kind of change the color that you have on there. So I will definitely garnish with some of this wonderful salmon skin crisps. And this is entirely up to you if you wanted to do it or not. It's almost like a little crunchy relief from that soft texture, but it also has richness. And I did salt it with some sea salt, so there's a nice punch.
Beautiful. That's so fun too, to have the little salmon skin crunch. We've been talking a lot about layering and different textures on the table, but the different textures on the palate is really also kind of wonderful too.
Oh, sure, yeah. Another fun thing I like to do here is garnish with some of our own red wine infused sea salt. So these are large crystals, and even though I've got a certain amount of salt on there, it doesn't hurt to put just a little bit of this. These are large crystals of sea salt that I infused, are basically coated with some of the red wine. Same idea as I did with the butter sauce, where you concentrate down and cook down some wine into a syrup without all the shallots and herbs and things, and then coat it over some crystals of sea salt. And then you can just let it dry or dehydrate, put it out to dry for a couple days worth or into a dehydrator. And just a little bit goes a long way. If you catch a little crackle of that with your bite, all of a sudden there's this intensity of flavor. Works really well. You remember that I picked all these fresh herbs so you can garnish with these. And this can be kind of like a fun sprinkle of some freshness, different shapes of all the different herbs, the little strips of tarragon. So all of these kind of brighten it up, add a little more complexity. Just as our wine is complex from all of those varietals, you know that you can play the same when you're putting together your food. So nice garnish and decoration there, just a little bit.
Oh, beautiful and delicious.
So hopefully these ideas or something like this that you might be able to make up ahead, maybe you can make your butter sauce up ahead of time. You know, how you wanted to serve it or present it at the table, you can portion it up and serve it right there for the guests, or you could set it up maybe at your buffet table if you're doing something like that, and everyone can help themselves to as much or as little as they want. And then also remembering that you can keep your butter sauce right next to it on the side. Remember, please don't let it get too cold. It will congeal and set up. But you also, if you were to keep it warm, you would have to do maybe like a very low, gentle kind of a water bath underneath, and then another bowl underneath that to kind of insulate it so it doesn't separate or break on you.
Oh, delicious, Todd. You've outdone yourself again.
Thank you.
You know, you are our rock star here of the kitchen, that's for sure. Super exciting and absolutely delicious. I'm really looking forward to seeing you with the turkey next week, so we can all get to planning and what's going to happen on Thanksgiving Day. And I know you've got some amazing tips coming for us next week. Anything we should have ready?
You know, among all the other wonderful sides that you might be making, and or maybe some family members bringing their favorites or famous Thanksgiving holiday dishes and things. You know, the turkey, there's so many different ways to prepare it. There's so many different types of turkey out there. It's kind of confusing, but find the one that works for you. If you want to experiment with something else, you know, there's all kinds of recipes out there. We have recipes. We have simple ones on our website. There's ways to do brines and things like that. But I thought what I would do is showcase maybe more of the cooking method on it and preparation on it by doing what is called a spatchcock. And by spatchcocking or cutting down the turkey and flattening it, it kind of changes the cooking time on it. It will make it a little bit easier, less space in the oven taken up in time and things like that. But I also wanted to, for sure, show you my way of carving the turkey. So I'll demonstrate that for you also afterwards. So you have maybe a different angle or a different way of considering how you want to portion it up and slice it and then present it on your beautiful table that you have for your friends and family.
All right, so we need to make sure we're all getting our knives sharp and ready. You know, no dull minds, no dull knives. So it's going to be a fantastic holiday season.
And consider the thermometer, the oven-safe thermometer that you can put in, the probe thermometer as well for your turkey. You know, it's a great way to tempt the dark meat and the breast meat to make sure that they're cooked enough without overcooking and having that terrible dry turkey. So you can avoid that, was it the Christmas vacation turkey that Chevy Chase cuts into and it explodes? So
yeah.
Hopefully you don't have that.
I use my thermometer for anything from baked goods to fish to chicken, turkey, and it is one of my favorite gifts. And there are some of them that have a remote that you as the chef or the barbecuer can have the thermostat on your waistband and have the probe in the oven. And that's really nice if you're doing something, you know, doing the turkey on the barbecue or
right.
Any of those other tips. There's a lot of different ones out there. The key is being able to have that thermometer in the oven while you're cooking. I've bought a lot at our local Shackfords, but I know many people, it is one of my favorite gifts to give. So I hope you all have a great week. Thank you for joining us for another Thursday night. Thank you to all of our fantastic guests for the tips and tricks. Jenna's, Shannon, Pamela, thank you all for joining us, and Todd and Brooke for another great explanation of what we should be eating and drinking again right now. So looking forward to seeing you all next week. Be well, be kind. Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great, Desmond.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Stefan.
Hi, Stefan. Hi, Gloria, Gary.
Awesome.
My boyfriend made the salmon and we loved it. So thank you.
So good.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.